So my soul longeth
come on and sing that. After you, Yahweh, your Lord, are my heart's desire, and I do love to worship at your feet. You alone are my strength and my shield. To Yahweh alone cause my soul to stand still. You alone are my heart's desire, and I belong to worship at your feet.
You're my friend.
You're my friend, and you are my Abba, even though you are my King. I love you more than the other, so much more than anything. You are my strength and my shield. You alone cause my soul to stand still. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship at your feet.
I want you, Yahweh, and
I want you more than gold or silver. Only you can satisfy. You alone are the real joy giver and the apple of my eye. You alone are my strength and my shield. Yahweh alone, you cause my heart to stand still. Yahweh alone are my heart's desire, and I love to worship at your feet.
well, you're my friend.
You're my friend, and you are my Abba, even though you are my King. I love you more than any other, so much more than anything. Yahweh alone are my strength and my shield. Yahweh alone, you cause my soul to stand still. Yahweh alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship Come on, lift your hands and Shabbat Him.
Hallelujah.
Come on in, Shabbat our great King.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, Abba. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
For all things.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Yahweh.
Second Peter, chapter 2. But there were false prophets also amongst the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privately shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the master that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. And through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingers not, and their damnation slumbers not. For if Yahweh spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to the lower regions, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved to judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah the eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the wicked, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an example to those that after should live wickedly, and delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy manner of life of the wicked. For that righteous man dwelling among them, in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. Yahweh knows how to deliver the pious out of temptations, and to reserve the unjust unto the day of judgment to be punished. But chiefly them that walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanness, and despise authority. Presumptuous are they, self-willed. They are not afraid to speak evil of dignities. Whereas angels, which are greater in power and might, bring not railing accusation against them before Yahweh. But these, as natural brute beasts made to be taken and destroyed, speak evil of the things that they do not understand, and shall utterly perish in their own corruption, and shall receive the reward of unrighteousness, as they that count it pleasure to riot in the daytime. Spots they are, and blemishes, sporting themselves with their own deceivings while they feast with you, having eyes full of adultery, and that cannot cease from sin, beguiling unstable souls, a heart they have exercised with covetous practices, cursed children, which have forsaken the right way and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, but was rebuked for his iniquity. The dumb donkey, speaking with man's voice, forbade the madness of the prophet. These are wells without water, clouds that are carried with a tempest, to whom the mist of darkness is reserved forever. For when they speak great swelling words of vanity, they allure through the lusts of the flesh, through much wantonness, those that were clean escaped from them who live in error. While they promise them liberty, they themselves are the servants of corruption. For of whom a man is overcome, of the same he is brought in bondage. For if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of the Master and Savior Yahshua Messiah, they are again entangled therein and overcome, the latter end is worse with them than the beginning. For it had been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness, than, after they had known it, to turn from the holy commandment delivered to them. But it has happened unto them, according to the true proverb, the dog is turned to his own vomit again, and the sow that was washed to her wallowing in the mire. End of chapter.
Yoel, chapter 2. Blow the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahweh comes, it is near at hand. A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and a strong there has not ever been the like, neither will be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devours in front of before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is like the Garden of Eden in front of them, and behind them is a desolate wilderness, yes, and nothing will escape them. The appearance of them is like the appearance of horses, and like horsemen, so will they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains will they leap. Like the noise of a flame of fire that devours the stubble. Like a strong people set in battle array. Before their face the people will be much pained. All faces will gather blackness. They'll run like mighty men. They will climb the wall like men of war. And they will march every one on his ways, and they will not break their ranks. Neither will one thrust another. They will walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon the sword they will not be wounded. They will run to and fro in the city. They'll run upon the wall. They'll climb upon the houses. They'll enter in at the windows like a thief. The earth will quake before them. The heavens will tremble. The sun and the moon will be dark, and the stars will withdraw their shining. And Yahweh will utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great, because he is strong that executes his word. For the day of Yahweh is great and very terrible. Who can abide it? For this reason also now, says Yahweh, you turn to me with all your heart, and with fasting and with weeping and with mourning, and tear your heart and not your garments, and turn to Yahweh your Elohim, because he's gracious and merciful. He's slow to anger, and he's of great kindness, and repents him of the evil. Who knows if he will return and repent, and leave a blessing behind him, a meat offering and a drink offering to Yahweh your Elohim? Blow the trumpet in Zion, sanctify a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the people, sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children and those that suck the breasts. Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet. Let the priests, the ministers of Yahweh, weep between the porch and the altar, and let them say, spare your people, O Yahweh, and give not your heritage to reproach, that the heathen would rule over them. Wherefore should they say amongst the people, where is their Elohim? Then will Yahweh be jealous for his land, and pity his people. Yes, Yahweh will answer and say to his people, look, I will send you corn and wine and oil, and you will be satisfied with it. And I will no more make to you a reproach amongst the heathen. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, and I will drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face toward the east sea, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. And his stink will come up, and his ill odor will come up, because he's done great things. Do not fear, O land, be glad and rejoice, for Yahweh will do great things. Do not be afraid, ye beasts of the field, because the pastures of the wilderness do spring. For the tree bears her fruit, the fig tree and the vine do yield their strength. Be glad then, you children of Zion, and rejoice in Yahweh your Elohim, because he's given you the former rain moderately, and it will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain and the latter rain as before. And the floors will be full of wheat, and the vats will overflow with wine and oil. And I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten, and the cankerworm, and the caterpillar, and the palmer worm, my great army which I sent among you. And you will eat in plenty, and be satisfied, and praise the name of Yahweh your Elohim, who has dealt wondrously with you. And my people will never be ashamed. And you will know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am Yahweh your Elohim, and none else, and my people will never be ashamed. And it will come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters will prophesy, and your old men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. And the sun will be turned to darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. And it will come to pass that whoever will call upon the name of Yahweh will be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem will be deliverance, as Yahweh has said, and in the remnant whom Yahweh will call. End of chapter.
James, chapter 5. Go to now, you rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. You have heaped treasure together for the last days. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, cries. And the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of Yahweh Sabaoth. You have lived in pleasure on the earth, and have been wanton. You have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and killed the just, and he does not resist you. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Master. Behold, the husbandman waits for the precious fruit of the earth, and has long patience for it, until he receives the early and latter rain. Be you also patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Master draws near. Grudge not one against the other, brethren, lest you be condemned. And behold, the judge stands before the door. Take, my brethren, the prophets who have spoken in the name of Yahweh for an example of suffering affliction and of patience. Behold, we count them happy which endure. You have heard of the patience of Job, and you've seen the end of Yahweh, that Yahweh is full of pity and of tender mercy. But above all things, my brothers, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by the earth, neither by any other oath, but let your yes be yes, and your no, no, lest you fall into condemnation. Is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Is any merry? Let him sing psalms. Is any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the assembly, and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Master. And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and Yahweh shall raise him up. And if he has committed sins, they shall be forgiven him. Confess faults one to another, and pray one for another, that you may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Eliab was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain. And it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth brought forth her fruit. Brethren, if any of you do err from the truth, and one convert him, let him know that he which converts the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death, and shall hide a multitude of sins. End of chapter.
Exodus chapter 4. And Moses answered and said, But behold, they will not believe me, nor listen to my voice, for they will say, Yahweh has not appeared to you. And Yahweh said to them, What is that in your hand? And he said, A rod. And he said, Cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses fled from before it. And Yahweh said to Moses, Put forth your hand, and take it by the tail. He put forth his hand, caught it, and it became a rod in his hand. That they may believe the Yahweh Elohim of their fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, and the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob has appeared to you. And Yahweh said furthermore to him, Put now your hand to your bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, his hand was leprous as snow. And he said, Put your hand into thy bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and plucked it out of his bosom, and behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe you, neither listen to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe also these 2 signs, neither listen to your voice, that you shall take of the water of the river, and pour it upon the dry land, and the water which you take out of the river shall become blood upon the dry land. And Moses said to Yahweh, O Yahweh, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue. And Yahweh said to him, Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the dumb or deaf or the seeing or the blind? Have not I, Yahweh? Now, therefore, go, and I will be with your mouth, and teach you what you shall say. And he said, O Yahweh, send, I pray you, by the hand of him whom you will send. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he comes forth to meet you. And when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. And you shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. And I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you what you shall do. And he shall be your spokesman to the people. And he shall be, even he shall be to you instead of a mouth. And you shall be to him instead of Yahweh. And you shall take this rod in your hand, and with it you shall do signs. And Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, Let me go, I ask you, and return to my brethren which are in Egypt, and see whether they be yet alive. Jethro said to Moses, Go in peace. And Yahweh said to Moses in Midian, Go, return to Egypt, for all the men are dead which sought after your life. And Moses took his wife and his sons, and set them upon an ass, and he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of Yahweh in his hand. And Yahweh said to Moses, When you go to return to Egypt, see that you do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I put in your hand, but I will harden his heart, that he shall not let the people go. And you shall say to Pharaoh, Thus says Yahweh, Israel is my son, even my firstborn, and I say to you, Let my son go, that he may serve me. And if you refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay your son, even your firstborn. And it came to pass by the way, in the inn, that Yahweh met him and sought to kill him. And then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at his feet and said, Surely a bloody husband you are to me. And so he let him go. And then she said, A bloody husband you are, because of the circumcision. And Yahweh said to Aaron, Go into the wilderness to meet Moses. And he went and met him in the mount of Yahweh and kissed him. And Moses told Aaron all the words of Yahweh who had sent him, and all the signs which he had commanded him. And Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the children of Israel. And Aaron spoke all the words which Yahweh had spoken to Moses, and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that Yahweh had visited the children of Israel, and that he had looked upon their affliction, then they bowed their heads and worshipped. End of chapter.
First Timothy chapter 4. Now the Spirit speaks expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from foods, which Yahweh has created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth. For every creature of Yahweh is good, and nothing to be refused, if it be received with thanksgiving. For it is sanctified by the word of Yahweh and prayer. If you put the brethren in remembrance of these things, you shall be a good minister of Yahshua the Messiah, nourished up in the words of faith and of good doctrine, whereunto you have attained. But refuse profane and old wives' fables, and exercise yourself rather to holiness. For bodily exercise profits little, but holiness is profitable to all things, having promise of the life that now is and of that which is to come. This is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptance. For therefore we both labor and suffer reproach, because we trust in the living Elohim, who is the Savior of all men, especially of those that believe. These things command and teach. Let no man despise your youth, but be you an example of the believers, in word, in behavior, in love, in spirit, in faith, in purity. Till I come, give attendance to reading, to exhortation. Neglect not the gift that is in you, which was given you by prophecy, with the laying on of the hands of the body of elders. Meditate upon these things. Give yourself wholly to them, that your profiting may appear to all. Take heed to yourself,
and to the doctrine. Continue in them. For in doing this you shall both save yourself and them that hear you. End of chapter.
Zechariah, chapter 10. Ask of Yahweh rain in the times of the latter rain. Yahweh will make bright clouds and give them showers of rain, to every one grass in the field. For the idols have spoken vanity, and the diviners have seen a lie, and have told false dreams. They comfort in vain. And for this reason they went their way like a flock. They were troubled because there was no shepherd. My anger was kindled against the shepherds, and I punished the goats. For Yahweh of hosts has visited his flock, the house of Yehudah, and has made them as his goodly horse in the battle. Out of him came forth the corner, out of him the nail, out of him the battle bow, out of him every oppressor together, and they will be like mighty men, who tread down their enemies in the mire of the streets in the battle, and they shall fight, because Yahweh is with them, and the riders on horses will be confounded. And I will strengthen the house of Yehudah, and I will save the house of Joseph, and I will bring them again to place them, for I have mercy upon them, and they will be as though I had not cast them off. For I am Yahweh their Elohim, and will hear them. And Ephraim will be like a mighty man, and their heart will rejoice like through wine. Yes, their children will see and be glad, and their heart will rejoice in Yahweh. And I will hiss for them and gather them, for I have redeemed them, and they will increase as they have increased. And I will sow them amongst the people, and they will remember me in far countries, and they will live with their children and turn again. And I will bring them again also out of the land of Egypt, and gather them out of Assyria. And I will bring them to the land of Gilead and Lebanon, and a place will not be found for them. And he will pass through the sea with affliction, and will smite the waves in the sea, and all the deeps of the river will dry up, and the pride of Assyria will be brought down, and the scepter of Egypt will depart away, and I will strengthen them in Yahweh. And they will walk up and down in his name, says Yahweh. End of chapter.
Hosea, chapter 6. Come, and let us return to Yahweh, because he has torn, and he will heal us. He has smitten us, and he will bind us up. After 2 days will he revive us. In the 3rd day he will raise us up, and we will live in his sight. And then will we know, if we follow on to know Yahweh. His going forth is prepared like the morning, and he will come to us like the rain, and like the latter and the former rain to the earth. O Ephraim, what will I do to you? O Yehudah, what will I do to you? For your goodness is like a morning cloud, and like the early dew it goes away. And for this reason have I hewed them by the prophets. I've killed them by the words of my mouth, and your judgments are like the light that goes forth. For I desired mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of Elohim more than burnt offerings. But they, like men, have transgressed the covenant, and there have they dealt treacherously against me. Gilead is a city of those who work iniquity, and is polluted with blood. And like a troops of robbers wait for a man, so the company of priests murder in the way by consent, for they commit lewdness. I've seen a horrible thing in the house of Israel. There is the whoredom of Ephraim. Israel is defiled. Also, O Yehudah, he has set a harvest for you when I return the captivity of your people. End of chapter.
Deuteronomy, chapter 4. Now therefore, listen, O Israel, to the statutes and to the judgments which I teach you, for to do them, that you may live and go in and possess the land which Yahweh Elohim of your fathers gives you. You shall not add to the word which I command you, neither shall you diminish anything from it, that you may keep the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim which I command you. Your eyes have seen what Yahweh did because of Baal Peor, for all the men that followed Baal Peor. Yahweh your Elohim has destroyed them from among you. But you that did cleave to Yahweh your Elohim are alive, every one of you, this day. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as Yahweh my Elohim commanded me, that you should do so in the land where you go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations which shall hear all these statutes, and say, Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great who has Elohim so near to them as Yahweh our Elohim is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law which I set before you this day? Only take heed to yourself, and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things which your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. But teach them your sons and your sons' sons, especially the day that you stood before Yahweh your Elohim in Horeb, when Yahweh said to me, Gather the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they shall live upon the earth, and that they may teach their children. And you came near, and stood under the mountain. And the mountain burned with fire to the midst of heaven, with darkness, clouds, and thick darkness. And Yahweh spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the voice of the words, but saw no similitude, only you heard a voice. And he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments. And he wrote them upon 2 tablets of stone. And Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that you might do them in the land wherever you go over to possess it. Take you therefore good heed to yourselves, for you saw no manner of similitude on the day that Yahweh spoke to you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flies in the air, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters that beneath the earth. Unless you lift up your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, should be driven to worship them and serve them, which Yahweh your Elohim has divided to all the nations under the whole heaven. But Yahweh has taken you and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be to him a people of inheritance, as you are this day. Furthermore, Yahweh was angry with me for your sakes, and swore that I should not go over Jordan, and that I should not go into that good land which Yahweh your Elohim gives you for an inheritance. But I must die in this land. I must not go over Jordan. But you shall go over, and possess that good land. Take heed to yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of Yahweh your Elohim, which he made with you, and make you a graven image, or the likeness of anything which Yahweh your Elohim has forbidden you. For Yahweh your Elohim is a consuming fire, even a jealous El. When you shall beget children, and children's children, and you shall have remained long in the land, and shall corrupt yourselves, and make a graven image, or the likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of Yahweh your Elohim, to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that you shall soon utterly perish from off the land whereunto you go over Jordan to possess it, and you shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. And Yahweh shall scatter you among the nations, and you shall be left few in number among the heathen, where Yahweh shall lead you. And there you shall serve Elohim, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. But if from there you shall seek Yahweh your Elohim, and shall find him, if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul, when you are in tribulation, and all these things are come upon you, even in the latter days, if you turn to Yahweh your Elohim, and shall be obedient to his voice. For Yahweh your Elohim is a merciful El. He will not forsake you, neither destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers which he swore to them. For ask now of the days that are past, which were created before you, since the day that Elohim created man upon the earth, and ask from the one side of heaven to the other,
whether there has been any such thing as this great thing is, or has been heard like it. Did ever people hear the voice of Yahweh speaking out of the midst of the fire, as you have heard, and live? Or has Yahweh essayed to go and take him a nation from the midst of another nation by temptations and by signs and by wonders and by war and by a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm and by great terrors, according to all that Yahweh your Elohim did for you in Egypt before your eyes? Unto you it was shown, that you might know that Yahweh, he is Elohim. There is none beside him. Out of heaven he made you to hear his voice, that he might instruct you. And upon earth he showed you his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, and brought you out in his sight with his mighty power out of Egypt, to drive out nations from before you greater and mightier than you are, to bring you in, to give you their land for an inheritance, as it is this day. Know therefore this day, and consider it in your heart, that Yahweh, he is Elohim, in heaven above and upon the earth beneath. There is none else. You shall keep therefore his statutes and his commandments, which I command you this day, that it may go well with you, and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days upon the earth which Yahweh your Elohim gives you forever. Then Moses severed 3 cities on this side Jordan toward the sun rising, that the slayer might flee there, which should kill his neighbor unawares, and hated him not in times past, and that fleeing to one of these cities he might live, namely Bezer in the wilderness, in the plain country of the Reubenites, and Ramoth in Gilead of the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan of the Manassites. And this is the law which Moses set before the children of Israel. These are the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments which Moses spoke to the children of Israel after they came forth out of Egypt. On this side Jordan, in the valley over against Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon, whom Moses and the children of Israel smote after they were come forth out of Egypt. And they possessed his land, and the land of Og, king of Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorites, which were on this side Jordan toward the sun rising, from Aroer, which is by the bank of the river Arnon, even to Mount Sion, which is Hermon, and all the plain on this side Jordan eastward, even to the sea of the plain, under the springs of Pisgah. End of chapter.
Ezekiel chapter 38. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus says the sovereign Yahweh, Understand that I am against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn you back and put hooks into your jaws, and I will bring you out, and all of your army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, a great company, with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer and all his bands, and the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and all his bands, many people with you. You be prepared, and prepare for yourself, you and all your company who are assembled to you, and you be a guard to them. After many days you will be visited. In the latter years you will come into the land that has been brought back from the sword, and that has been gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, that have always been waste. But it is brought forth out of the nations, and they will dwell safely, all of them. You will ascend and come like a storm, and you will be like a cloud to cover the land, you and all of your bands and your many people with you. Thus says the sovereign Yahweh, It will also come to pass, at the same time will things come into your mind, and you will think an evil thought, and you will say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, and I will go to those who are at rest, who dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, and having neither bars nor gates, to make a spoil.
and to take a prey, and to turn your hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that have been gathered out of the nations that have gotten cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land, Sheba and Dedan, and the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions of it, shall say to you, have you come to take a spoil? Have you gathered your company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? For this reason, Son of man, prophesy and say to Gog, thus says the sovereign Yahweh, in that day, when my people of Israel dwell safely, you will not know, will you not know it? And you will come from your place, out of the north parts, you and many people with you, all of them riding upon horses, a great company and a mighty army, and you will come against my people, again, Israel, like a cloud to cover the land. It will be in the latter days, and I will bring you against my land, so that the heathen can know me, when I will be sanctified in you, O Gog, before their eyes. Thus says the sovereign Yahweh. Are you he of whom I have spoken in old time by my servants the prophets of Israel, who prophesied in those days many years that I would bring you against them? And it will come to pass at the same time, when Gog will come against the land of Israel, says the sovereign Yahweh, my fury will come up in my face, for in my jealousy, in the fire of my wrath I have spoken. Surely in that day there will be a great shaking in the land of Israel, so that the fishes of the sea, and the fowls of the heaven, and the animals of the field, and all creeping things that creep upon the earth, and all men who are upon the face of the earth will shake at my presence. And the mountains will be thrown down, and the steep places will fall, and every wall will fall to the ground. And I will call for a sword against him throughout all my mountains, says sovereign Yahweh. Every man's sword will be against his brother. And I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood, and I will rain upon him and upon his bands and upon the many people that are with him, an overflowing rain, and great hailstones, fire and brimstone. And in this manner I will magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations, and they will know that I am Yahweh. End of chapter.
Jeremiah chapter 3. They say, if a man put away his wife, and she goes from him and becomes another man's, will he return to her again? Will not that land be greatly polluted? But you have played the harlot with many lovers, and yet return again to me, says Yahweh. Lift up your eyes to the high places, and see where you have not been laid with and ravished. In the roads have you sat for them, like the Arabian in the wilderness, and you have polluted the land with your whoredoms and with your wickednesses. Therefore the showers have been withheld, and there's been no latter rain, and you had a whore's forehead, and you refused to be ashamed. Will you not from this time cry to me, my father, you're the guide of my youth? Will he reserve his anger forever? Will he keep it to the end? Look, you have spoken and done evil things as you could. Yahweh also said to me in the days of Hosea the king, have you seen what backsliding Israel has done? She has gone up on every high mountain and under every green tree, and there has played the harlot. And I said, after she had done all these things, turn to me. But she returned not. And her treacherous sister Yehudah saw it. And I saw, when for all the causes by which backsliding Israel committed adultery I had put her away, and had given her a bill of divorce, yet her treacherous sister Yehudah did not fear, but went and played the harlot also. And it came to pass, through the likeness of her whoredom, that she defiled the land and committed adultery with stones and stocks. And yet for all this, her treacherous sister Yehudah has not turned to me with her whole heart, but in a manner that is disappointing and deceitful, says Yahweh. And Yahweh said to me, the backsliding Israel has justified herself more than treacherous Yehudah. Go and proclaim these words toward the north, and say, return, you backsliding Israel, says Yahweh, and I will not cause my anger to fall upon you, for I am merciful, says Yahweh, and I will not keep anger forever. Only acknowledge your iniquity, that you have transgressed against Yahweh your Elohim, and have scattered your ways to the strangers under every green tree, and you've not obeyed my voice, says Yahweh. Turn, O backsliding children, says Yahweh, for I am married to you, and I will take you one of a city and two of a family, and will bring you to Zion. And I will give you shepherds according to my heart, who will feed you with knowledge and understanding. And it will come to pass, when you have multiplied and increased in the land in those days, says Yahweh, they will say no more, the ark of the covenant of Yahweh. Neither will it come to mind, neither will they remember it, neither will they visit it, neither will they be done any more. At that time they will call Jerusalem the throne of Yahweh, and all the nations will be gathered to it, to the name of Yahweh, to Jerusalem. Neither will they walk any more after the imagination of their evil heart. In those days the house of Yehudah will walk with the house of Israel, and they will come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given for an inheritance to your forefathers. But I said, how will I put you among the children, and give you a pleasant land, a goodly heritage of the hosts of nations? And I said, you will call me my father, and you will not turn away from me. Surely, like a wife treacherously departed from her husband, so have you dealt treacherously with me, O house of Israel, says Yahweh. A voice was heard upon the high places, weeping, supplications of the children of Israel, for they have perverted their way, and they've forgotten Yahweh their Elohim. Return, you backsliding children. I will heal your backslidings. Look, we come to you, for you are Yahweh our Elohim. Truly in vain is salvation hoped for from the hills and from the multitude of mountains. Truly in Yahweh our Elohim is the salvation of Israel. For shame has devoured the labor of our forefathers from our youth, their flocks and their herds, their sons and their daughters. We lie down in our shame, and our confusion covers us. For we have sinned against Yahweh our Elohim, we and our fathers, from our youth even to this day, and have not obeyed the voice of Yahweh our Elohim. End of chapter.
O Israel, come back, O Israel, to Yahweh, your Abba, for your sins have caused you to stumble. Come back, my people, Israel. Come on, Yah says, come back, O Israel, come back, O Israel. To Yahweh, your Abba, for your sins have caused you to stumble. Come back, my people, Israel. Come on, we're going to come back to Yahweh. Come back to Yahweh. Let's bring Yahweh the fruit of our lips. The fruit of our lips. Come on, let's come back. Come back to Yahweh. Bring these words to you. Say, bring Yahweh the fruit of our lips. The fruit of our lips. Come back, O Israel. Come back, O Israel. To Yahweh, your Abba. For your sins have caused you to stumble. Come back, my people, Israel. come back. Come back, O Israel, to Yahweh, your God. For your sins have caused you to stumble. Come back, my people, Israel. Come on, let's come back to Yahweh. Come back to Yahweh. Bring Yahweh the fruit of our lips. Come on, one more time. Let's come back to Yahweh. Come back to Yahweh. Bring these words with you. Come on, let's say unto Yahweh. Say. Take away our guilt, grant us favor, that we might bring you an offering. Come on, let's bring Yahweh the fruit of our lips, Israel. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
We bring you the fruit of our praise, Yah. Hallelujah. We bring you the fruit of our lips.
Hallelujah, Yahweh.
Be exalted, O Yah. In the midst of your people, Israel.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, Yahweh.
Hallelujah.
Deuteronomy chapter 11. Therefore you shall love Yahweh your Elohim, and keep his charge and his statutes and his judgments and his commandments always. And know you this day, for I do not speak with your children which have not known, and which have not seen the chastisement of Yahweh your Elohim, his greatness, his mighty hand, and his stretched out arm, and his miracles and his acts, which he did in the midst of Egypt, to Pharaoh the king of Egypt, and to all his land, and what he did to the army of Egypt, to their horses and to their chariots, how he made the water of the Red Sea to overflow them as they pursued after you, and how Yahweh has destroyed them to this day, and what he did to you in the wilderness until you came to this place, and what he did to Dayson and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, the son of Reuben, how the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their households and their tents, and all the substance that was in their possession in the midst of all Israel. But your eyes have seen all the great acts of Yahweh which he did. Therefore shall you keep all the commandments which I command you this day, that you may be strong, and go in and possess the land where you are going to possess it, and that you may prolong your days in the land which Yahweh swore to your fathers to give to them and to their seed, a land that flows with milk and honey. For the land where you are going in to possess is not as the land of Egypt from where you came, where you sowed your seed and watered it with your foot as a garden of herbs. But the land where you are going to possess is a land of hills and valleys, and drinks water of the rain of heaven, a land which Yahweh your Elohim cares for. The eyes of Yahweh your Elohim are always upon it, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And it shall come to pass, if you will listen diligently to my commandments which I command you this day, to love Yahweh your Elohim, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul, that I will give you the rain of your land in his due season, the first rain and the latter rain, that you may gather in the corn and your wine and your oil. And I will send grass in your fields for your cattle, that you may eat and be full. Take heed to yourselves, that your heart be not deceived, and you turn aside and serve other Elohim and worship them. And then Yahweh's wrath be kindled against you, and he shut up the heaven, that there be no rain, and that the land yield not her fruit, and lest you perish quickly from off the good land which Yahweh gives you.
Therefore you shall lay up these my words in your heart and in your soul, and bind them for a sign upon your hand, that they may be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall teach them your children, speaking of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall write them upon the doorposts of your house, and upon your gates, that your days may be multiplied, and the days of your children in the land which Yahweh swore to your fathers to give them, as the days of heaven upon the earth. For if you shall diligently keep all these commandments which I command you, to do them, to love Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, and to cleave to him, then will Yahweh drive out all these nations from before you, and you shall possess greater nations and mightier than yourselves. Every place whereon the soles of your feet shall tread shall be yours. From the wilderness and Lebanon, from the river Euphrates, even to the uttermost sea shall your coast be. There shall no man be able to stand before you. For Yahweh your Elohim shall lay the fear of you and the dread of you upon all the land that you shall tread upon, as he said to you. Behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. A blessing if you obey the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you this day, and a curse if you will not obey the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, but turn aside out of the way which I command you this day, to go after other Elohim which you have not known. And it shall come to pass, when Yahweh your Elohim has brought you into the land whither you are going to possess, and you shall put the blessing upon Mount Gerizim, and the curse upon Mount Ebal. Are they not on the other side Jordan, by the way where the sun goes down, in the land of the Canaanites, which dwell in the champaign over against Gilgal, beside the plains of Moreh? For you shall pass over Jordan to go in and possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim gives you, and you shall possess it and dwell in it, and you shall observe to do all the statutes and judgments which I set before you this day. End of chapter.
And they sing the song of Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are your words, Yahweh Almighty, just and true.
Hallelujah.